Discover how some of the top executives are trading their own companies with our Insider Trades tool. See who's been buying or selling stock and what their trades say about insider sentiment. Use this unique big data tool to make more informed stock trades. That's higher trading from MarketsX.
Very good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first edition of the weekly special with yours truly. Since we're based in Limassol, Cyprus, and Cyprus was so good to us for so many years, I will dedicate this first edition of the show to this beautiful country where I reside for quite a few years now. Many of you might know that Cyprus had a reputation of being a fiscal paradise in the European Union, and myth says that some of the wealthiest people in the world have properties and businesses in Cyprus. Why is that? Is the question. Is this a myth? Is this true? And most importantly, how is Cyprus doing now? 2 years after the global pandemic caused chaos in the entire world. Is Cyprus still a fiscal paradise? And for this, I've invited to join us tonight an army of experienced lawyers and auditors to give you an update on how the business climate in Cyprus is doing 2 years after the pandemic started. So, ladies, gentlemen, traders, please help me welcome my first guest for tonight, Elena Kyriakou, lawyer, member of Cyprus Bar Association, and also member of International Bar Association. Elena, a very good evening to you. How are you?
Very good evening. I'm good. It's an everyday job for me, but I'm working on it. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Thank you ever so much for accepting the invitation, Elena, and welcome to the very first edition of the weekly special with Dot Financial News. Just wait to see what I have prepared for tonight. Are you ready for incendiary talks? For
sure. Looking forward to it.
All right. So let's welcome the second guest for tonight. We have with us George Patsalides, joining us, law student and intern lawyer from Limassol, Cyprus. Good evening, George. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you once again for being here. And how do you feel? Excited? Nervous? How are you?
I'm doing very well. Everything is okay. I'm glad that I'm able to join you.
I'm glad that you're able to join me as well. Right, ladies, gentlemen, the heavyweight champion in finance and accounting and also auditing. Joining us from Limassol, Cyprus, Mr. George Georgiou, certified public accountant and registered auditor. Good evening, George. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me. Glad to
Always,
be you.
always a pleasure to have you here. Very good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of the weekly special with Dot Financial News. I'm going to ask you some questions. As I reside in Cyprus for quite a few years now, but I know some of the answers, but I do need specialized advice. So I want to start with the first question. You decide who answers which question. Okay?
Okay, go on.
First question. How big was the impact that the pandemic had on the Cyprus economy?
Okay, let me. As you know, the Cyprus economy is services-based, A lot of businesses had to close for a long time. They had to work. They had to get used to it working from home. But the most important hit on the Cyprus economy, it was the tourism. Unfortunately, the Cyprus economy lost 2 seasons of tourism, and this was a big hit. So,
Yes.
okay, so the Cyprus economy depends a lot on services and tourism, so it is important how this will improve in the future.
Very well said. Now, I have a question, another question. How did Cyprus handled this pandemic and the lockdown, in your opinion?
Well, if I may answer this myself, I believe that Cyprus, as all other countries, was really not that much. Actually, we were organized. Cyprus has been through so many trouble in the past. I mean, we've been through a lot of conquers, a lot of wars, and there have been a few pandemics before this. But I think Cyprus rose up very, very prepared for this. We did have some, let's just say, trouble in the beginning, but I believe the pandemic actually brought a new beginning to Cyprus, where you're seeing everybody handling everything differently, but there's one common understanding: safety comes first. So everybody is taking care of everybody, and all the businesses now are very careful. They're keeping distances, and I believe that some parts were a bit extreme, but you have to admit that no other country, not even Cyprus, were prepared for a pandemic. So generally speaking, for a small country with so little people in it, actually managed to survive and organize itself in a more stable and more safe environment than before.
Yes, and as George was saying a second ago, unfortunately, a lot of businesses have shut down, and people migrated to other businesses, or the ones that were owning businesses ended up being employed, probably for the first time in their life. Some of them. What major changes did you notice in the last 2 years in terms of businesses opening in Cyprus? Because I know Cyprus opens a lot of business every day.
Mm-hmm.
If I may answer this question for you. Actually, in Cyprus, registering a company, either you're a citizen of Cyprus or you are a foreigner, you may register a company in less than a week, approximately, in the register of companies. Nevertheless, since, for example, from 2019, that few changes have occurred in Cyprus. Let's say, for example, considering that the corporate tax, for example, it's been raised to 12.5%, gave the same status as many other European countries. Nevertheless, this was not so huge impact during the pandemic for the past 2 years, though Cyprus had the ability and the opportunity to evolve in a different status. For example, e-commerce companies had the chance and the opportunity to evolve in the greatest status, in contradiction with other companies that unfortunately through pandemic, they suffered, most of them, with closures. So it had an impact. The good thing is that Cyprus, through help and guidance, either from government, either from procedures from health and hygiene, from health department, we kind of tried and we succeeded in a more bigger ratio than other countries, since we are a small country in population, to recover faster than other countries in the idea of being more safe and working as much as possible. Personally, for the period of time of 2 years, I have managed and worked even much more during the pandemic and the lockdown than any other years before.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Very well put.
I must also say that, following what the guy said, that relatively the Cyprus people have followed the instruction, that they have been disciplined concerning the pandemic. So the ratio is only 0.3%. That means in 75,000 tests a day, we've got something 200 new cases of COVID. In the last few years, Cyprus have attracted a lot of investment trading companies. And together with this company lately, we've got a lot of demand from people abroad to establish business relating to these activities, software developments, and we've got a lot of these type of companies now coming in Cyprus. It's a very friendly environment, educated people. The life in Cyprus is very easy to adopt because of the size and its people. And today they announced the estimates for next year. They reckon a growth of 4%, unemployment below 6%. For the time being, because the government had to pay all these benefits and help the poor people, the budget is running on a deficit. But we believe next year with the tourists coming back, things are going to be much better.
Yeah,
very well said. Very, very well said. What sort of firms are opening now on the island? More fintech, financial companies, as you said a minute ago. Is there a pattern of companies that open up in Cyprus?
Well, George, I mean, he's right. A lot of software companies are coming in Cyprus. If I may take this question, George, because I actually have a lot of clients coming in at this point, and I have noticed that all of this is what I'm saying, that generally the pandemic brought us to a new level of doing business through online means. So this meaning that the more prepared we became as Cyprus, the more we started attracting online businesses. And yes, we are attracting fintech technologies, a lot of, let's just say, investment firms, and a lot of IT companies, which is something that Cyprus hasn't been having that many times before in the past, you know? So after COVID happened and everything started becoming digital, apparently it's attracted a lot of businesses that are actually in the market doing digital work. So from my side, I mean, I have seen, and I agree with the other two professionals here, that during the pandemic, we have received more requests and more work than we have ever received in the past. Cyprus, for some reason, it became the center of all inquiries, of all requests for software businesses, for development, for fintech technologies, and all of this. I mean, if you think about it, there's the IFX Expo going to be happening around next month, and I'm one of the participants there, and there have been I'll see you there. There has been so much traffic on it. There's so many people attending, and for this, I think it's one indication that Cyprus is enhancing its business in this field because there's more people coming in for this business. This is how I see it, and I agree with the two professionals.
And the impact on the economy is tremendous because these companies, they employ people, they pay good wages, so they immediately start to offer in the Cyprus economy. So that's why, especially in Limassol, you see all this development, and we are becoming like Dubai or whatever.
I'm going to get to that in just a second.
If I can mention additionally, Andrew.
Yes.
The pandemic, unfortunately, had many side effects in the idea and the perspective of problems in the family, because both of the parties of the couple, they stayed at home. Though in contradiction with the normality of life, this also gave the opportunity, as mentioned previously, with either trading online or doing a remote job that before we didn't have the opportunity to work from home. So most of the companies that they are either in the trading idea are as CIF companies or consultancy companies that they are online and they are giving advices, either dating sites. They have been raised in a very significant number through the period of time of 2 years of the pandemic. So even though we had a lot of side effects behavior-wise, because having people restricted in an idea, in the other hand, it gave the possibility to develop a possibility and an opportunity of working in a different way in high-tech, fintech, and more approachable way in order to succeed and possible. So now, nowadays, even after pandemic, which is not over yet, unfortunately, it will be still going on for minimum like 1 or 2 years approximately, regarding to status and statistics that they're all over the world. It did give the green light for e-commerce companies and a lot of investors to approach Cyprus in order to invest into companies, online companies.
But opening a company, comes with a lot of issues, many of the times. So I want to ask you, what are the most pressing issues that your business clients face in Cyprus in terms of company incorporation, audit, and accounting?
Okay. The biggest problem that we've got to set up a company, audit accounting is the easiest part. The most important thing now for a new company in Cyprus, especially for foreign investors, is to be successful in opening bank accounts with local banks.
Yes.
The anti-money laundering law now in Europe is so strict that you need a lot of effort. The investors must be very serious. The money they are going to put in their business must be clean and they have to justify it. So the biggest concern when we've got a new client is to be able to open a bank account. All other things, we've got a lot of experience. Accounting and audit, Cyprus have been using international standards since ages. Most of the European countries adopted to these standards in the last 10 years. Cyprus have been using these standards for many years. I must say that Cyprus, it was the only country in the 90s that was allowed to train chartered and certified accountants other than UK. And this is because Cyprus was always using the international standards. So the main concern is to have the documentation to open bank account. The rest is up to us.
And are the requirements in Cyprus different than in other jurisdictions for company formation? Is it easier? Is it harder? How is it in comparison to other jurisdictions?
Well, creating a company is not difficult. As George, the auditor, said, the main problem is to be able to act with the company. Meaning, if you're going to create a holding company to just hold, let's just say, a real estate property, or let's just say shares in another company, meaning pure holding, nothing more, you can create the company really fast. But if you're going to create a company that's more elaborate, let's say, for example, this IT company that we're saying before, this type of activity, then it's going to take more time, just because you're going to need to prepare the memorandum or the basic documentation actually in a specific description. Because once you create the company and you want to act basis on the company, offer the services, you need to be able to issue invoices on it. And to do that, there has to be the description of the service that you're offering through the invoice in the initial documentation of the company. And some other companies, for example, may require licensing activities. For example, if you're going to create a real estate company, then you will need specific license in order to do the business. So it takes longer depending on the activities of the company. That's it. But generally, as the other George said, it doesn't take too long. You can actually have a company within a week, provided it's just a plain company, a holding company, let's just say.
Right. And out of all the jurisdictions out there, what makes Cyprus apart from Malta, let's say, or Luxembourg or Monaco? What is the main difference? Why should people come to Cyprus and not go to Malta?
Expertise and educated people. Of course, the tax system for new investors is very attractive, but Cyprus has been offering services to foreign investors then in the form of offshore companies. There are no offshore companies for many years, and we've got so much experience with investors around the world, from all over the world.
Fair point. Fair enough. Some people are saying that Cyprus is now becoming the Monaco of the Mediterranean. We see skyscrapers being built all over the seashore. The prices are going through the roof. Is Cyprus becoming the new Monaco, or we still have a long way to go?
I think it's on its way.
It's on its way. Let me tell you something else. Before, because UK was in the European Union, a lot of Cypriots used to go to British universities. Now UK is out of the European Union. You cannot get the student loan, so the students now are staying in Cyprus. So this creates demand for flats, for halls, and is down to demand and supply.
True. Yeah. However, are the salaries increasing as well? Because we see properties for sale in Limassol for over $1 million. We see properties for rent in Limassol for astonishing numbers: 1,500 euros a month, 2,000 euros a month. Are the wages increasing as well, or people just continue working on 1,000 euros a month and the rent is 900?
Dear Andrei, one of the reasons why this is very obvious, fortunately and unfortunately in Cyprus, is because of the inflation of population of Cyprus. Things are increasing rapidly. So since Cyprus, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the third most expensive countries in the world, you may understand that fortunately or unfortunately, because we have a lot of forex companies based mainly in Limassol, the economic status of the country, and especially Limassol, even though Nicosia is the main city.
It's the capital.
It's with a rapid growth, even though we have unemployment, even though new buildings are being constructed and real estate is higher than any other city around Cyprus. We understand that unfortunately this is rising. And I think so it goes like Monaco and even worse than that. Many, for example, famous singers around the globe, they're purchasing flats in Limassol. Why? Because it's a kind of trend. But everything has an amazing, rapid explosion in Cyprus, unfortunately, because, okay, salaries, they are not so big and wealthy for a lot of people, but unfortunately, the ratio is different than other countries that they have low economy.
Yes, I liked how you pointed out a second ago that a lot of famous singers and a lot of famous business people are buying property in Cyprus because it's a trend. Well, of course it's a trend when the corporate tax in the country is only 12.5% versus other European countries which tax you up to 40%. Of course. And based on what Elena was saying earlier on, it could go even lower than 12.5%, correct?
George, our auditor, has many things to say about this, that he's more qualified than me in this field. But generally, I have seen a lot of interest, especially in real estate. For example, just these last 2 weeks, I've closed 5 deals for real estate. And we're talking about people who are actually willing to come and establish their business in Cyprus. So we're talking about commercial properties mostly. So I have a client, actually, I think George knows him. He is paying rent for a whole building, so it's like 15,600 per month. So we're talking 15,000 every month for rent. And this is just a new business that's coming to work in Cyprus. I believe that the rents are high, yes, but if you notice, if you just make a small search, there's different prices in different locations. So the more you're closer to the beach, the more you're closer to places of interest, of course the prices will be higher. But I think it's area per area.
True. However, in my point of view, as someone that's renting, there's a huge discrepancy, between a neighborhood that's close to the beach and a neighborhood that's only 3 minutes away from that. We're talking about 2 kilometers away from the beach, and we see the rental price dropping to 50% or more in some cases.
Well,
Anyhow,
there's a reason for that. There's a reason because it's not really regulated. First of all, rents, they're not regulated. There's no authority to tell them that you can only rent it up to this much. It's basically up to each owner. I mean, if the owner needs the money, of course, he will give you a lower rent so that he will be able to rent it ASAP. I mean, it's still down to the human factor in Cyprus. This is what I believe.
yes, I love it that you put the dot on the I. That is the massive problem. So basically,
Okay.
what you're saying right now is that Cyprus is missing the rental law, basically, yeah? Some serious guidelines.
To tell you the truth, rental legislation was created in 1983. It was basically created to help the whole 1974 situation where a lot of people were renting. Actually, also my parents were renting in order to be able to stay somewhere. So the law here in Cyprus is mostly, let's just say, towards the interest of the tenant. But there were some final amendments in the last few years, so helping the landlord. But the main reason, well, what I have also noticed lately, there's a trend to actually ask for a guarantor even if you're renting. I have handled a lot of cases where tenants were not paying and they were actually not even leaving the premises, and they were actually doing a lot of damage over to the property. And in the middle of the evening, you lose it. I mean, I had a case that he left from a factory and he decided to take the staircase, the external staircase, with them, the tenant. And it was the owner who owned it, but he went there to find the property without staircases. So you see a lot of things going on. So I think that mainly the rents are going higher because at some point, some people are also scared. I mean, you may be a good tenant, but not everybody can be good tenants, if you know what I mean.
Yes, fair enough. Right. We're getting close to the end of the show. I'm going to have two more questions for you. How is Cyprus recovering after the pandemic in your view? Have we started the recovery yet or not yet?
In my view, next year is very important. We need tourism back. Okay, the services sector is doing well, but is not for half of the population to be doing well and half of the population not to do well. If you think how many people depend on tourism, agriculture, most of the agricultural products in Cyprus are sold to the tourism industry. So you can imagine all these people who work with the earth in the last couple of years, they had big problems. So it's not just good to say that my audit firm is doing well because I've got some new companies that came from abroad. We need all the economy to start working. The estimates for 2022 are good. Now we've got the high inflation worldwide because of the raw materials, the sudden closing and opening of the economies. This will go until, we estimate, until the end of the year. So 2022 is a very important year from the economic perspective. And I think for most of the countries.
Yes, indeed. The US is struggling as well. The European economy is shaken off as well. And of course, even the smaller countries, like Cyprus, feel this the impact of this tremendous pandemic that turned the world upside down. Right, ladies, gentlemen, I have one final question, probably the most important question of the evening. Is Cyprus still a fiscal paradise, or is that a myth?
That's not the case anymore. There are some very important advantages for new investors and people coming from abroad. Give you an example. Corporate rate 12.5%. No dividend tax. No dividend tax. Even if somebody comes to live in Cyprus for the next 17 years, is considered not domicile and he can get the dividend from his company tax-free. There are
Wow.
also advantages for new employees. For new employees, there is 20% allowance tax-free on income for people who get above 100,000. There is 50% allowance of the taxable income. There are very, very big advantages for people who come to work or set up business in Cyprus. And apart what other things we did, high level of services and so on, yes, the tax system is attractive, is not a tax paradise. If you can imagine, if you think that we pay to now with the national health 26%, social insurance contributions, VAT is 90%, but there is this policy for attracting new investments. Cyprus is a European country and cannot be considered as a tax haven anymore.
Right. Very well.
We are trying to compete to jurisdictions like Ireland, Luxembourg, and so on. But it's not a tax haven. Yes, we give the benefits for new investors, but that's it.
Right. I understand. Right. Does anyone want to say anything more?
There,
Go
Andrew, regarding and related with what fellow Mr. George he mentioned a few seconds ago. Okay, Cyprus is no longer considered as a tax haven, but fortunately for investors or future investors that they might be in interest to invest in Cyprus. Gladly, because of regulations that we have with government or with immigrants that they want to visit Cyprus, by investing an amount, let's say 350k euros, they get the permission of permanent visa. So it might not be a tax haven anymore since like 2019 and even much more now and nowadays. But gladly we give the opportunity either to youngsters or to elder people to visit Cyprus and invest and relocate. So they still have the opportunity of a haven, but in a different way, analyzing the perspective of being in Cyprus and be able to work in Cyprus and even bring their companies from abroad in Cyprus for a better kind of life, since criminality is lower than other countries. Thank you.
Right. Very well said. Elena, do you want to wrap it up for us? I can't hear you. You muted the microphone. There you go.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
no, there's a doggy that's very upset. I noticed that. I'm sure everyone else would, but it's a dog. What can it do?
He's upset, but I can still hear him. Okay, so basically, I believe with all my heart and all my experience here and the everyday work that I do, that Cyprus has so much potential. It just arose from the ashes. I mean, sorry, it's been through so much financially. We had the haircut in 2013. We had so many things going on, and still we rose up and we're still standing. And as the auditor said, our income is actually very, very much increasing as the GDP of Cyprus. So yes, tourism is a big hit for us because, bad or not, I mean, we're enjoying so much sunlight. We're having so many people coming in. We're giving so many packages in and out. Yes, but I think generally internationally tourism had problems, not just in Cyprus. For us, what actually helps us move forward is that we have managed to have few of the best people in the whole in the whole of the planet, let's just say. I'm sorry, but it's true. We have some of the best professionals in all fields, financial fields, legal fields, any field that you can imagine with regards to business solutions. And yes, our banks are a bit difficult, but I believe that they're just being careful. So basically, if a person wants to come and make an investment in some country and their business model is lawful, all they have to do is find the proper people to work together with. That's it. They can easily do their business in Cyprus, not too much of a hassle, and much faster. They just need to know what they're doing. That's it.
Right. Very well said. Very well said. Right, the time has come to say goodbye for tonight, unfortunately. But I want to thank to every single one of you for making it possible and for being so transparent with your answers tonight. So, George Patsalides, thank you ever so much for being with us tonight, and I'm looking forward to see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll wish you all the best for tonight. Have a good one, Mr. Georgiou. Looking forward to doing business together. Thank you ever so much for sharing the word of wisdom tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. At your disposal.
Thank you. And now, the last but not the least, Helena. Thank you ever so much for making this possible. Send my regards to your doggy. Go give him some food. Very upset.
I will just bring him in. Thank you so much for inviting me. Looking forward to seeing more of your videos. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you. Have a good evening. Right, ladies, gentlemen, this was it for the first edition of a weekly special with yours truly. We spoke about Cyprus. We spoke about the advantages. We spoke about the disadvantages of doing business in Cyprus. Now, everything is in your hands. If you wish to do business in Cyprus, here we are. If you don't wish to do business in Cyprus, take your time. Sooner or later, you will probably come back to Cyprus. This was it from my side tonight. Join me again tomorrow for a new round of Market Talks. And until then, have a good evening, everyone.